cannot tell you how delighted I am to be among friends. So are there any bankers in the room? Okay, good. I'm going to tell a banker joke or tell a story at banker's expense. Good, you're already laughing. So I've been doing a lot of speaking engagements and taking the Stuckey show on the road, talking about our revival, and it's been fascinating, the different groups that are interested in our story. Everything from the Kitchen Cabinet Manufacturers Association to the Consumer Brands Association to the Community Bankers Association. So I was speaking to them recently, and part of that was they wanted me to go to this very nice dinner the night before at some shishi restaurant, and I'm talking to these bankers, and I'm telling them how I drove to their speech instead of flying. That got some curious stares, and then I said, oh my gosh, and I saw a muffler man, I saw a Phillips 66 Gullwing station, and I saw like 5 amazing ghost murals. And completely blank stares. They did not get any of my references at all, and I know every one of you not only knows what a muffler man is, but probably has documented more than I have, which is saying a lot because I pull over all the time for them. So the worst part, well, it may have been the best part, but I gave my talk, and I think they laughed like once, maybe twice, and so I thought I bombed. And afterwards they said, oh my gosh, you were amazing, they were cracking up. Yeah, I've already gotten like 3 other speaking gigs from that event, but hopefully y'all will laugh more. All right, so I've already set the stage there. So let's see, next slide. I'm going to talk to you about the Stuckey's revival and our journey, and more importantly, I'm going to talk about the road trip and why that is so integral to everything that we do at Stuckey's. This is probably what y'all think of when you think of Stuckey's. This was us at our peak in the 1960s and 70s. We really were a roadside oasis known for our pecan log rolls and clean restrooms and Texaco gas, kitschy souvenirs, coonskin caps, rubber alligators, ashtrays shaped like toilets that said, put your butts here. You know, that was us, right? And my grandfather sold the company in 1964, a year before I was born, and we had decades of outside corporate ownership. So next slide. This is what we became after decades of outside ownership. The last owner was the Chicago Railroad conglomerate. I know we're in Illinois, so I'll be careful what I say about your home state. But the Chicago Railroad Company did not get this quirky roadside brand that sold rubber alligators and pecan log rolls. And this is what happened to us under outside corporate ownership. I'm not anti-corporate America, by the way. I love them. They hopefully will be customers of ours and buy our product. But this is what happened to us when we didn't have the right fit. And so decades of decline. Next slide. So this is what we used to be. Next slide. And this is what we are now. So as you heard in the nice introduction Cheryl gave, I had this whole career. I am number 5 of 7 grandchildren. I'm number 3 of 5 kids. I was never the heir apparent to this pecan log roll fortune that my family actually had long sold. But I was never groomed to take over the family business. We're not your typical family business where it's passed down from generation to generation. It fell out of our hands and I had to buy it back. So I gave up a career in law and the environment and politics. I was making a very nice salary. I was hanging out at coffee shops with my eco friends, talking about saving the world from climate change and in our little green bubble wearing Birkenstocks and drinking our oat milk lattes and being vegan, to promoting roadside attractions, selling candy and souvenirs. They all think I'm crazy, but people ask me this a lot. Why'd you buy your family's business? Here's a very simple answer. It was for sale. Here's the other answer. I loved my grandfather. So next slide. I'm going to tell you his story. Oh, I love this. So right after I bought the company, and I was caught in that whole COVID thing too. November 2019, right? A few months later, COVID hit. The world fell apart. And I have sunk my life savings into buying this company at age 53, having zero background in business. I remember talking to a trusted family advisor, and I asked them what they thought of me doing this, and they said, well, you've never even run a lemonade stand. What makes you think you can run Stuckey's? And I didn't have a good answer, but I thought, you know what, maybe I don't know how to run a lemonade stand, but I think I know how to run Stuckey's. Because road tripping and everything that Stuckey's represents is literally in my DNA. It's not just my last name. It's what I've always loved to do. That's why I know I'm among friends today. So this was me right after I bought Stuckey's. The Atlanta paper did an article that wasn't nearly as nice as what Cheryl wrote. It was lovely, but they didn't get most of their facts right, including the headline that said, "Heiress drives family legacy on the road to revival." I don't know about you, but when I think of heiress, I think of the Kardashians or Paris Hilton. I think of people who actually inherit something and it's worth billions. I bought a company that was 6 figures in debt. That's claim to fame was this. This is what I purchased. Next slide. And let me tell you how I got to be to that point, and how Stuckey's got to be that point. It all started in 1937 as a roadside pecan stand during the Great Depression. And that's why when COVID hit, I was undeterred, because I thought, my grandfather started his company with a $35 loan from his grandmother and a rented truck, driving around the countryside in Dodge County, Georgia, buying pecans, and my grandmother working in our kitchen, making pralines, divinity, and what we're now known for, the pecan log roll, and walking a mile to this little stand and selling them to travelers. And so if he could do that during the Great Depression and become fabulously successful, I can plug on through. So it really was such an inspiration to me to go through his papers and understand his story. And by the way, the only thing I really got of value, other than the trademark, which is definitely worth something, was his archives. I got 6 boxes of his papers, which had not been looked at in over 50 years. Wow. So most of the images you're going to see have never been seen up until the past couple years. And I slowly, painstakingly started digitizing them, cataloging them, archiving them. So you're looking at the Stuckey historian, archivist, brand manager, marketing director, in-house legal counsel, chief salesperson, and also the CEO. You wear many hats when you run a comeback brand. So I began looking through his papers and learning his story. And all of this I've learned in recent years, because he was my grandfather growing up. He'd sold the company. And I was 11 when he died. So sadly, a lot of his stories had been lost to time until I opened those boxes and read them. So I found this photo. Next slide. And I also found this photo. So he learned what we all know is that people traveling on the roads, back then there were no interstates, it was Route 66 and the Lincoln Highway and the Illinois Highway and the Dixie Highway. So he was, the Jefferson Highway is the one I meant to mention. So he realized that travelers needed a place to pull over and get a cold drink. He used to advertise ice water, just like Wall Drugs. He advertised clean restrooms. He advertised that he had snacks and candies and our pecan log rolls and souvenirs to get kids to whine in the backseat and get their parents to pull over. So he realized he was onto something, and pretty soon he had several stores. And he was doing very well. I like to tell people, before there was TA or Pilot or Love's or Buc-ee's, there was Stuckey's. He was the first who really started having a chain. Now, some of you may challenge me on that, and if you do, you may know more than I do. But he really was the first to scale in 40 states, over 350 stores. You know, this was back in the 50s and 60s. So he was doing very well, and then he had a crisis. And I'm going to tell particularly about the second crisis, which is most relevant to you. But one of the things I learned is that if you are a business, or if you're an organization, or in this case, Route 66, if you're going to survive for 50 and 100 years soon, you're going to survive some really tough times. And you just have to keep on plugging away. So I learned from his story resilience, which is not just bouncing back, it's bouncing back better. And so throughout his journey, and now as I reinvent his brand, I realized that a key part of surviving for 100 years, and I hope to get to that point by 2037, you have to be nimble. So his first challenge was World War II. Gas was rationed, people weren't traveling the roads, and so he had to shut down all of his stores. Next slide, and this is what he did. He got into manufacturing. He got a candy plant, he got supplies from the Department of Defense, and he started making candy for the troops. So he completely reinvented the brand to becoming a consumer packaged good. Next slide. And so he learned how to package product. And so that opened up a whole new line of business for him. Next slide. And when the war ended, the great thing is all these servicemen and women came home. They went to school on the GI Bill, and we all know what happened next. They started having babies and buying cars and becoming prosperous, and nobody vacationed by airplane back then. They all went by car. This is when the great era of the road trip began. And so he started building back his stores. Next slide. And he was still selling his product. So he learned to diversify. Next slide. And before you know it, he had his stores up and running again. He was back in business and he was doing great. And then the real tragedy hit, which all of you can relate to. Next slide. You're one of the few crowds that I think can relate when I say the Interstate Highway Act of 1956 was not as awesome as people may think. It was great for moving goods across this country very quickly and efficiently, but it was really hard on those of us who had our businesses across America. The wigwam villages and the diners shaped like coffee pots and the muffler men. So many of these businesses suffered or completely shut down during that era. And next slide. So we went from this, right? This is the old Dixie Highway. Next slide. And this, I had to put in a Route 66 slide. This is going through Albuquerque. Next slide. To this, right? Not so much fun. So what did my grandfather do? Did he stay and fight, or did he embrace the interstate? And as we know, he embraced the interstate. And I love that he realized how to pivot, and he not only embraced the reality of what was happening, but he did it full throttle. I love this postcard I found in his papers. Traveling on beautiful Interstate 70. So, right, the bankers did not laugh at this. I'm like, I don't know about you. I've been on I-70. Beautiful is not the first adjective that comes to mind. But he did what he had to do to survive. And he used it as a chance to be resilient, to build back better. And so he said, this is an opportunity for me to brand my stores. Before, his stores were whatever building was available, quickly, cheaply. He would often use existing buildings, or he would just do these basic A-frames. But he had this opportunity now to brand his stores across the interstate. And so this is what many of you recognize, this zigzag carport, the teal slope roof, the classic Stuckey's red and yellow sign, and the amazing partnership with Texaco. He got a percentage on every gallon of Texaco gas sold. That made him a millionaire. Not bad for a poor country boy who was picking cotton and started selling pecans as a side hustle. So that also gave me encouragement. He didn't have an MBA either, and he did okay. So next slide. We became just known for being part of the American road trip. Next slide. And this is one of my favorite stories about him. This is how he decided where to site his stores. Those of you who remember traveling in the 70s in the back of the Woody station wagon, I was right there along with you, you will know there were Stuckey stores almost everywhere. And people ask me, how did he figure out where to put those stores? So here's what he did. He would get in his Cadillac, he would get a cup of coffee, he would start driving. Some of you may know where this is going. When nature called, that's where he would put a Stuckey store. And when I read that story, I thought, oh my gosh, if I had only been along with him on those road trips, we would have had double the number of stores. But that just shows he did shoe leather learning. He figured it out, and he loved to be on the road. He's a road warrior. And he lived his life traveling by car, pulling over at Stuckey's, talking to the managers. He knew them all. He knew the stores. He knew the people. And that's what made his stores and so many of these road trip destinations that we know and love, that's what made them special, was that sense of being welcome and a sense of place. So next slide. Yeah, I love that. That little girl in the back could have been me. So you'll see, this presentation is chock full of images. I think y'all can appreciate this more than most audiences because these are just so wonderful, and all these were in our archives. Next slide. So this just illustrates how Stuckey's managed to create a sense of place. Yes, he made a huge concession. He moved to the interstate. It broke our hearts that we couldn't still be on these back roads as much as we had been, or not the back roads, but the classic roads. But he wanted to create a sense of place. So if you pulled over in New Mexico, which is where this was taken, you would get date shakes, because that's a thing out there. And if you pull over in Texas, you would find Texas memorabilia. You knew where you were. And every store was individually owned and operated by a husband and wife team who lived in the store. So it often had the wife would, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to be stereotypical, but back in the day, the wife was the one making her homemade pimento cheese and her biscuits. So you would see this on the menu, and you had really an understanding of where you were, and they would buy local crafts. Some of the stores had honeybees. Some of the stores had mynah birds that would talk. I hate that that was outdone by health regulations, no disrespect, Mr. Mayor and manager, but they shut those down. But you really had a sense of being in a place that was different, even though we had a uniform consistency and the outside design and the product that we sold, but every place was special. So this little, I love this picture. The guy with the milk mustache sent me this photo on LinkedIn. He's now a very successful executive, but I love that picture. Next one. This I found in the archives. This was the Stuckey's in Florida, and it also happened to be near a fishing hole. So if you went to the Stuckey's, you would find bait, tackle, and you could even get your fishing license. And people would congregate there, talk to some, the most rewarding part of my job is hearing from people telling me their Stuckey stories. And so this man, Al, wrote me and said they would congregate before and after their fishing trips, and they would often talk about their catch. And so this photo was in the archives. I used this, by the way, for a caption contest on Facebook, and the winning entry was, "This is what you get when you use pecan log rolls for bait." Next slide. So I'm going to close out this section on my grandfather. Oh, can somebody flash what's Q&A time, just so I keep up? Someone keep me honest. Somebody? I think 10 minutes for Q&A. Okay, let me know. So think of questions or comments. I welcome all. This is the most important thing about my grandfather, is that he had a sense of purpose. And when going through his files, I consistently found this saying, "Every traveler is a friend." And I found a framed print of that and learned that that was on his desk. And to me, I've adopted that to this day, even though we've changed how we're running the business now. The point is, anyone who comes in contact with our brand is a friend, and they're going to be treated like that. He did not only have that on his desk in a frame, he lived it. So you're probably wondering, this is an interesting looking slide for those of you who don't know all the players. So the top is the Green Book. Hopefully you've seen that, because it's a great road trip movie. And then Truman Capote, and anyone know who's on the bottom right-hand corner? Any punk rock fans? Sid Vicious, thank you very much. You get a pecan log roll. So what do these three have in common? It's kind of an odd collection of photos. They all illustrate how everyone was treated as a friend at Stuckey's. So during the era of segregation, particularly in the Deep South, when many places were whites only, Stuckey's was one of the few places on the interstate that was a chain where people could safely pull over if you were African American. And so for that reason, if you've seen the movie The Green Book, I think the most important scene is at a Stuckey's. If you have not seen the movie, please see it. It's terrific. So we were in the movie The Green Book because of that. And Truman Capote, recently there was a biography that came out about him. Who knew? He was a big road tripper. And he came from the South, and he lived in New York, and he hung out with this swishy society crowd. And he used to take road trips with this real heiress, CZ Guest, and they would take this fancy champagne and Truman Capote's prized English bulldogs, and the only place where they could pull over with the dogs was Stuckey's, because we welcomed everyone. And so they used to have picnics at Stuckey's with his bulldogs, Stuckey's chili dogs, and CZ Guest Dom Perignon champagne. I just love that story. I mean, just everyone's welcome, right? And then somebody sent me this picture of Sid Vicious on the Sex Pistols World Tour, where they pulled over at a Stuckey's in Tennessee. And so I posted on social media, and now I have like 200 punk rock fans following Stuckey's. Everyone is welcome. So, next slide. So what happened to us? Oh wait, that should not be in there. Next. All right, every comeback, you have to have a real downfall, and we had a doozy. We had like a trifecta of bad crapola happen to Stuckey's. First, we sold to Pet Dairy Corporation, which then had a series of other takeovers, including that Chicago Railroad conglomerate. So we had a series of corporate owners who progressively did not get the brand, and we were more and more like a small subsidiary of a big company. And then we all remember the Arab oil embargo's impact on road tripping, or many of us do. People just couldn't afford to travel by car. And then the Airline Deregulation Act was great for Delta Airlines and American, and suddenly people can afford to travel domestically by plane. It really sucked for those of us that were making our living on the road. So all of that happened, and Stuckey's just plummeted. Next slide. Our comeback actually began in 1985 with this handsome man who is my father, and he had the chance to get Stuckey's back. So interesting story, you'll appreciate this. My father in the 1970s bought the franchise rights to Dairy Queen stores on the interstate highway system, another iconic classic brand. And so he brought Dairy Queen stores to the interstate. That was his company. He was very, very successful with that company. He was not looking to take on the big, hot dumpster fire of a company that Stuckey's had become, but the last company that had it was losing money off of Stuckey's, and they wanted to get rid of it. They wanted it off their books. So my father basically got Stuckey's back for nothing, and he managed to keep Stuckey's alive by pairing it with his Dairy Queen stores. So if any of you have pulled over and seen a Stuckey's next to a Dairy Queen, that's how my father kept Stuckey's alive for 20 plus years. So fast forward to 2010, my dad and his business partners sell Stuckey's to Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett's company, and go figure, the Oracle of Omaha did not want to buy Stuckey's. Can't believe that. I'm glad he didn't now, but he passed because it was not profitable. It was only propped up by Dairy Queen keeping it alive. So when Dairy Queen was sold, all the infrastructure that supported Stuckey's went away, and also my dad and his business partners all retired. So they left Stuckey's literally being run by two wonderful people, but no real budget, no marketing budget. They hadn't had a strategic plan in forever. They didn't even have a CEO. So, next slide. So that's when I come on board, and I get the wonderful chance to buy this company. So, next slide, I'll show you. This is what I got. So we had a rented warehouse in Eastman, Georgia, and we were outsourcing all of our candies. The stores we no longer owned or operated. There were only 13 original Stuckey's still around in November of 2019. There were about 50 that were the ones my dad had done, which were sort of the store within a store concept. So you'd see a Stuckey's in a travel plaza, and they were paying us a modest franchise fee. Oh, and we had been out of compliance with federal franchise laws for over a decade, and we're facing cease and desist orders of all those locations. Hot mess. Not only were we 6 figures in debt, but I had that legal mess. So I had to transition everything to licensing fees. So we really aren't making any money off the stores, unfortunately, but that's just the reality. And we had this distribution center that was full of dusty merchandise, much of which had not turned in over a decade, including 6 cases of Britney Spears t-shirts. This is my first week on the job, and I held up that t-shirt. And fortunately, she made a comeback. So I sold all of those at a profit they can totally plummet and they make it back. I'm with you. So I love that shirt. It just reminds me how low we had sunk, and Brittany and I are both making comebacks. All right, next slide. So I did this ambitious road trip tour to the 13 original Stuckeys that were still standing. This one is in Marietta, Oklahoma. So those of you who've seen some of the original stores, you'll know. Some of them look really good. Hattiesburg, Mississippi, Summerton, South Carolina are two examples that look really good. Johnston City, Illinois is one of the best. They have a statuary garden, really wonderful. So there's a handful that look good, but a lot of them are, this does not look like the earlier images I showed you, right? Like, I don't know who came up with that blue. That is not the right shade blue. So I am documenting all this on social media because, like I said, I am the marketing person for Stuckey's. People ask me, why do you do the branding for Stuckey's? I can afford myself. I can't afford an influencer. They're like, you should use an influencer. I'm like, I don't have any money. So I am going around the country and I am driving my car during COVID, and I'm taking these photos that I try my best with my little iPhone camera to make them look okay. And so the stores are fixer-uppers. So, I'm like, here, look at this big pencil, and the store's in the distance in the background, because it doesn't look that great. But I really met my real challenge with the next door. Let me show you this. This is what a lot of them look like. So this is what, some of those 50 stores within a store look like, and this is just not what my grandfather built. Next slide. So this was my low moment. I call this my come to Jesus moment, where I really hit rock bottom. This is a store in Marion, Arkansas. As you can see, it literally has a hole in the roof. It looked terrible. I pulled over in the parking lot. I was almost in tears. I thought, this is my life savings. This is what I've sunk my entire fortune into, and it's got a hole in the roof. And I was just crushed. But I thought, okay, I've got to plug along. I've got to take a photo. I've got to post something on social media. I've got to present a happy face. So next slide. Here's what I posted. Some of you have dashboard Jesuses will appreciate this. Jesus is my co-pilot. And so I did a close-up of Jesus and the store very much in the background. But it turned out to really, literally be my come to Jesus moment. Because I walked into the store, and you know what I saw? It was filled with people. And they were buying stuff. And so I went to this one guy who looked like he was a trucker, and I asked him, why are you here? Have you noticed the store has a hole in the roof? And he said, yeah, well, I grew up stopping at Stuckey's, and I always felt welcome, and the people here are friendly, and maybe Stuckey's is a fixer-upper, but so is our country, and so am I, and I'm going to keep on stopping. And then I called our headquarters, all two people, and I said, what's the sales of product looking like in Marion, Arkansas? And they were like, you know what? They sold a lot of pecan log rolls. They're actually doing okay. And that's when I realized, if a store with a hole in the roof could still make money, and if this guy who said, you're a fixer-upper, I still believe in your brand, and he didn't know who I was, by the way, I thought, we can make it. But I also realized I had to turn things around in a different way, just like my grandfather did during World War II. And I had to get back to literally our roots and selling product, because that's something I could control. I couldn't control the stores anymore. But I could control the product, which had been outsourced for over 50 years, and frankly, the quality had suffered. So, next slide. This is what I did. I got a business partner who's the third-generation pecan farmer and also a cousin of mine, and his name's R.G. Lamar. The two of us pooled our resources, got an SBA loan. We bought a pecan shelling and candy plant in Rennes, Georgia, and we are back in the candy business. I wish we could have revived the original Stuckey's candy plant in Eastman, Georgia. It is in complete disrepair and on a railroad right away, and I'm not fighting with the railroad. So, next slide. And we did a total refresh of the brand. I love this because I think it looks nostalgic, but also has the bright colors and fresh looking, so it's a blend of both. And it's a tip of the hat to my grandfather because the logo is his signature. And the cross and the T is my favorite part. It looks like a trumpet blaring. We're back! So I get excited every time I see the branding. Next slide. I just want to show you what I bought, and this is the branding when I bought the company, and so this is the refresh. The image on the left, I don't know about you, but that product looks like dog vomit. That's what we were selling, and we were still making a profit. So I was like, we can make money off this brand, and that was selling, and they even got the date of our founding wrong. It was like the packaging companies, like, you know, the nephew that nobody could get a job for designed that or something. I was just embarrassed that that is what bore my grandfather's name. So the new one is just a total refresh. It looks so much better. Next slide. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about road tripping. So I had to suddenly figure out, how am I going to market this brand? Well, we're known for the road trip, but what we're really doing is selling pecan marbles and pecan snacks. And I thought, you know what, we're still about the road trip. It's in our DNA. We are part of the American road trip experience. Whether we're selling candy at a grocery store or we're on the interstate highway in one of those 13 original stores, we're still about the road trip. So I just started taking road trips. One, because I love it, but two, it's about our brand and posting about the fun of exploring America by car. So next slide. These are all going to be pretty quick. So I had to include Route 66. I've done every state except for I need to do Kansas, California, and Arizona. And I did Arizona forever ago, like 30 years ago, so I need to do Arizona again. So I don't have slides of those states. My apologies if you're from those, but anyone know where this is? Yeah, this crowd. Next one. Right? So I'm bringing my kids in on this. I have a 16-year-old and a 20-year-old. Next slide. This is one of my favorites. I didn't even know this. I'm walking along the road and I see this sign. Anyone know where this is? Yes, next slide. This is TP Curios. All right, keep me honest on this. Tucumcari? Did I say it right? Yeah, I was saying Tucumcari, and my father's like, Lord, honey, I think you don't know what the hell you're talking about. So, Tucumcari. So, there we go. Next slide. And then this was yesterday. I could not believe I found the Burma Shave sign. So thank you, Illinois, for preserving this. This is amazing. Next. I also love all things highways. Do you all know where the end mark for the Jefferson Highway can be found? New Orleans, yes. It is just this unassuming marker on the road. Nobody's paying attention to it. It's in the hustle and bustle of sort of that whole, I don't know the districts, but it's right in the middle of town and nobody is paying attention to it. It's right there. It's kind of like the Chicago markers for Route 66, right? The two markers. The only people paying attention to them, by the way, were people from other countries. All right, next one. And I love documenting what's special about Roadside America. I included this one because you appreciate so many of these are gone, or we're losing them. This is in Fort Myers, Florida. And I saw a photo of the devastation, and that sign has been completely destroyed. I took this photo 6 weeks ago, right before Hurricane Ian. Yeah, next slide. I love Howard Johnson's, right? I always pull over for them, and when the last one closed, I felt like someone I knew died. I wrote an obituary for it. It's pinned on my LinkedIn profile, by the way. It's one of the best things I think I've written. I spent a lot of time on that. So this one is in the middle of Houston, Texas. There's a Howard Johnson's, right? It's a red carpet in now. Next one. And this is Ocala, Florida. This is also another hotel, but the architecture is still there. You know, these places remind me of Stuckey's. They have good bones. They were built back when places were built to last, right? And that's why every single day almost, I get people sending me what I call ghost stores. You know, the old Stuckeys that have become quilt shops, bars, some are strip joints, a few are places where people live, a couple homes. More than one are porn shops, yeah. They're outside of zoning, right? And so I'm just obsessed with what some of these stores have become, and same with the Howard Johnsons. Next. Oh, and this is also, you know, what places used to be. Did anyone ever go to Six Gun Territory? It's like my favorite amusement park in Florida. Florida is like, along with Illinois, you know, it's one of the great states for roadside attractions, and it's now a strip mall. I mean, that's just criminal. Next. But, so I'm going to end on a hopeful note and then open up for questions. This is what gives me hope. Not only people like you, friends like you, but places like this. Anyone know where the Dive Motel is? Nashville, Tennessee. Loretta Lynn stayed here. Johnny Cash stayed here. All the country music greats. Dolly Parton, this is where they used to stay. I think the sign is beautiful, but look at what they've done with the interior. Next slide. They've completely renovated it. Every room is unique and special. It costs about $260 a night. It has a hipster bar, and the pool sells membership fees, and by 9 a.m. on weekends, that place is teeming with people. I had to take the photo right when they opened before it just got completely overwhelmed with 20, 30-something hipsters. I was the only person there without multiple tattoos and piercings. So I love that these old motels are being discovered by the next generation who are embracing it, and they're saving them, they're renovating them. Here's another one. Thunderbird Inn, Savannah, Georgia. You know, and they're all over the country. These are everywhere. The AZ Gaston in Birmingham is being restored. It's also a civil rights landmark. So many of these are being restored. It just warms my heart. And other places are being restored. The original #1 Waffle House is now a museum. This is the roadside attraction closest to my home. This is 2 miles from my house. I go here all the time. This is the fun thing about being on this journey to celebrate Roadside America, is all the people you might not expect who are part of it. So I posted this photo and wrote about how much I love Waffle House. The next day I got a phone call from the CEO of Waffle House, Joe Rogers Jr., the son of the founder, and he said, I follow your journey on LinkedIn. I love what you're doing. Keep at it. If I can ever help you, just let me know. And I was so tempted to say, can you loan me a couple million? But still, I love that, you know, he's rooting us on, but bigger, they're rooting on for the comeback of a classic brand. Next slide. And it's working, right? I'm talking about the road trip, but I'm selling product. And we got in the New York Times Sunday business section, front page. Not bad for someone without an MBA. And it's not just me, it's what we're doing collectively, everyone who is part of this journey to revive this brand. And the article, if you haven't read it, Google it. It comes up like one of the top hits for Stuckeys. Nostalgia, pecan pralines, fueling the Stuckeys revival. And the story was actually all about, the front page was all about road trips and revival of the road trip. So the whole business section was devoted to road trip revival and how that's fueling economic growth. So the whole section was amazing. And so I may be talking about the road trip because that is the DNA and the essence of our brand. That's what we're all about, is making road trips fun. But I'm selling pecan log rolls and pecan snacks to grow the brand and make money. And one of these days, I'm gonna have enough money to buy one of those porn shops that used to be a Stuckey's, and I'm gonna revive it. So I will get there, yeah. Comebacks do not happen overnight. It's not like the movies or Rocky where there's this 1-2 punch and you're on top. Doesn't happen that way. So it may take us a decade or two, but I have patience, and we will get there before I retire. So it's working. The first year we were 6 figures in debt. We closed out last year over 13 million gross sales. 5,000 retail stores across the country carry our product. Most of those are chains. and over 2 million net profit. So we're making it. Yeah. So I think this is my second to last slide. I just like to end always with a homage to my grandfather, who I call Big Daddy. What a snappy dresser. Look at those shoes. Oh my gosh. So that's him doing what he did best, visiting the stores. I like to say I'm not living in the past, but I am most definitely respecting and honoring it. And the last slide has my contact information. Feel free to email me. That is the best way to reach me, but you can also follow me on social media. I'm Stephanie Stuckey on Facebook and LinkedIn, and @StuckeyStop on Instagram and Twitter, and I'm on TikTok. So happy to take any questions. And I'm also going to be around. Usually when I give talks, I give my talk and I'm out of here, but no, I'm here. I'm looking forward to this. Yes?
What about, where did Nickerson Farms and you guys come together at?
Good question. I don't know. I don't know how we're connected.
I heard that somebody worked for your dad, their granddad started Nickerson Farms.
Oh, I have heard that. My father did mention that. I told him I'd heard that, and he said he'd heard that too. I know there are people out here who love to, dig into history, so if you find any proof of that, I did not see that in the archives.
What about taking pictures of the old Stuckies and putting them on Facebook or something like that?
I do. They're up there. Yeah, they're especially the Stuckey's Facebook page. I should put them up more often. I do have a board member who is a marketing professional, and he gets upset when I post too much about the stores because the way we're growing the brand is selling the product. So it's kind of a fine balance, but I definitely do post a lot of photos of the stores, and the ghost stores especially. I'm really fascinated with, I personally am documenting all the ghost stores, the ones that are still around, and there are hundreds of them. That's the amazing thing, because they have good bones. It's a good foundation, so that's why they're still around. Yes?
Quick question for you. The first slide you had up there showed your dad by the stand, your grandfather by the stand. 10 pounds of pecans for $1.
Right?
What does 10 pounds of pecans cost today?
Close to 100. And the price fluctuates based on the crop, because pecans are alternating varying, so they can have good years and bad years. So in the lean years, the price may go up because they're scarce. But yeah, that definitely dates that photo. Fun fact about that pecan shed, I got a call about a year ago from a man in Eastman, Georgia, and he said, "You know that old pecan shed's still around?" I was shocked. Turns out it was standing behind the old Stuckey's candy plant. It's still there. And I called the man who owns the property, and he said he would keep it there until I could figure out what to do with it. And just this week, I got a commitment from the city of Rennes, Georgia, which is where our headquarters is now. And they've agreed, they're giving us all their tourism funding, $25,000, to renovate that stand. And we've got a Georgia Tech architecture class that is volunteering and making it their school project. So we have to, number the pieces, we have to rebuild it, and then there's gaps in it, so we have to try to find some original wood that matches it. So it's probably going to cost more than $25,000 to move it and rebuild it. But we're going to put it up outside our candy plant in Rennes, Georgia, make it a tourist attraction, along with a mural that talks about the history of Stuckey's.
Cool.
Yeah. So I'm so excited that original pecan stand it'll be somewhat open for business. I figure we could sell stuff out of it sometimes. Yes?
Are you keeping a journal of your journeys, and is there going to be a forthcoming book?
Yes. Yes, there's a forthcoming book. As far as a journal, I've just been so busy, I haven't had time. But every day I post on social media my journey, and so part of what I'm doing to recreate everything for the book is just going through my post. LinkedIn especially, I document what I'm doing. My LinkedIn post today, by the way, is all about Route 66 conference. It's about this conference. So I'm not trying to shamelessly say follow me, but the post today is about the conference. Well, I'm going to be around. So, I'm here till tomorrow. So I'm here all week. So feel free to come up to me. And the marketing guy on our board made these stickers. It said I met Stephanie while road tripping. He wants me to carry them around and pass them out. And he's like, whenever you meet someone you're on the road, give them a sticker. And I figure all of you count as meeting you on the road, so you get a sticker. Thank you.